Mason for Crash Course Muso, and welcome to another interview with friend, guitarist and UK's finest metal shredder, Mr. Andy James from Sacred Mother Tongue. Andy, welcome. Thanks for joining us, mate.
No worries.
Great to have you here. Andy, what or who first influenced you to want to play the guitar?
Basically, I was sort of like 12 years old. I mean, I've been playing like piano for a bit and stuff and getting into music and all that kind of stuff. And then, when I was 12 years old, I kind of said to my dad, Dad, I really want to get a guitar, because a friend of mine had bought one and I'd been playing his for a bit, and I thought, well, it's about time I got my own, really, you know. So we went and got this sort of like cheap Fender guitar and stuff and got like an amp, and then I just had like a stack of G&R books, Guns N' Roses books, that I borrowed off my mate who bought a guitar, and he wasn't using them really, he wasn't bothered. And I just started learning like Guns N' Roses stuff, and I mean I already had like Appetite for Destruction anyway. I was a massive sort of Slash fan, and I just thought, well, I'll use that as my basis to kind of, get into guitar and get my head around it. I just sort of like carried on really, just sort of played all the time, doing all the sort of pentatonic stuff that you normally pick up on when you're learning guitar. But the great thing about G&R was it wasn't just scales and kind of arpeggios and theory type stuff, it was actual melodic solos and kind of solos within songs. So I guess, from an early point, I started to learn things that were fairly melodic, and for some reason I could sort of understand how that worked compared to the backing track and all that sort of stuff. So
some nice tuneful stuff there from Slash. So
yeah, definitely. And it's sort of a tangible way of looking at the guitar, especially for a beginner. I mean, I'm not putting Slash down or anything like that at all, because what he plays is great, but it's for the song, and it's basic stuff to be able to pick up rather than just things that are flying by at a million miles an hour and you can't get your head around it. But yeah, that's basically what first got me into it. And then,
great.
Went like the normal route of being into sort of Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert, Greg Howe.
That was kind of an extension after you sort of done the Guns N' Roses stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay, great, brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Cool. Can you remember the very first thing that you actually mastered on the guitar?
Well, I suppose, going back to the whole sort of like Guns N' Roses thing, I mean, there was stuff like, I think the first song I ever really properly learnt was like Don't Cry.
Right.
That was quite nice from sort of playing open chords and stuff like that. And then, the solo's quite cool as well, because again, it wasn't sort of too technical, and it was, something I could get my head around, and I thought that I could get my head around that.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine actually ages ago, before I'd even started playing guitar properly, showed me something on the guitar, and it was In the Summertime.
Oh, right.
I don't know who did that.
Mungo Jerry, was it?
In the
Summertime?
And then to go from that to
clearly it's a natural transition.
Yeah, exactly. So Sweet Child of Mine was one of those things that I thought, because it's a great picking exercise, and in fact, I think it's sort of a well documented thing that it was only an exercise. Like Slash was kind of messing about with this kind of lick, maybe working on kind of picking and stuff like that, and never really thought to do anything.
Yeah.
And I think one of the guys in the band, maybe Axel or something, he's go, play that again.
Use that.
It's like, you're joking, aren't you? But it's kind of one of the most iconic intros to a song I think that exists today. The thing is, the concept behind it is pretty simple, because I mean it's just a pentatonic, but you're taking notes from that, so you've got using that part of it. But the cool thing about this is it follows the chord progression of the song.
Yeah.
So it starts in D, C, and then G, and then the root note changes. So you got.
Nice, yeah, of course.
But but it's actually, I mean, same pentatonic, it would be, because that's normally an E minor shape. But because you're playing it over those chords, it kind of gives it more of a major tonality. So.
That's right. Yeah.
So but it's a really clever kind of lick and stuff. But it's things like that I liked what he did. That I think I picked up on the kind of cleverness of that sort of writing maybe early on, and I started to maybe understand a bit about how those sorts of things worked. In order to improvise and stuff like that.
So there you go, folks. If you want to be as clever as Andy's on the guitar, clearly the route to that success is In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry, followed by
Sweet Child of Mine.
Sweet Child of Mine. There you go. Yeah, it's so obvious. Yeah,
the secret. Yeah.
Cool. Did you have a particular eureka moment that opened a few doors for your guitar playing?
Yeah, I mean, one, I suppose, which is the most prominent would be, the use of alternate picking, because it's always the gateway to shred is being able to kind of, really articulate all of your notes with accurate picking and stuff like that, because it often makes things sound faster than maybe they appear to be, because it's quite a clean technique and it separates all the notes from each other.
Gotcha.
I did almost kind of struggle with this because, I mean, doing the kind of more old school style playing, you're doing hammer-ons and pull-offs, with like pentatonics such as, and you're doing fast stuff like that, but obviously you want to kind of, do the more scary stuff if you can kind of get into that. And once I'd really got into a guitar player called Paul Gilbert,
right.
I had some instructional stuff of his, and it's often a well kind of used exercise which gets a lot of people up to that kind of standard of alternate picking. But there was one exercise in particular that he did which accented the problem with alternate picking, which is basically changing strings. I mean, you can get used to the action of alternate picking by just playing like one string. I mean, I suppose you could call it tremolo picking in a way, but you do it in more of a controlled manner, so it feels like if you were going to add more notes, you'd have one pick stroke per note instead of tremolo picking. Like instead of doing, you'd have, so you'd have more of a kind of synced up feel to it. But I mean, even just practicing playing one note, because all alternate picking is by definition alternate, so
down
it's
up,
down up, and that's kind of how you're doing it properly, is like every time you pick one note, the next one's going to be an upstroke and downstroke. But you get used to it, doing kind of things like that, and then let's say a sort of single line, which again is kind of more of maybe a Malmsteeny sort of approach, but it's okay doing it on one string. But then when you start to kind of move around, there was this one exercise, and I'll play it slow. It looks like this.
Okay, great.
And basically what that's doing is it's allowing you to play one note on the next string. And then back down again. So you basically you've got that awkward upstroke in between, because you're essentially with alternate picking you're playing outside of the strings,
right?
Which kind of it's a distance for the pick to go if you're not used to it. So it's one of those exercises that kind of drives your mum crazy. It's like, please play something else, But you're sort of sitting there, and I don't know. You get up to a certain sort of speed, and then you do hit a bit of a brick wall, but I don't know, somehow you can just kind of keep doing it and you keep doing it, and every time you go back to it, your muscle memory becomes, more honed in on being able to play that, So I mean, you kind of get to a point where you can just push it a bit more each time you do it. Yeah. So, gradually you can sort of get it faster. And then you can kind of add in more notes and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then when you get used to that sort of thing, you can kind of extend it over, bigger string groups and stuff like that. So I mean, that's that thing there that I just did is sort of part of D major. But if you were going to play it over E, because E is the second note in D major, it'd be more Dorian sort of thing.
Okay.
So you could have something like. Which you can kind of get more, but you're using that alternate picking technique.
Gotcha.
But it's that basic thing. If you can get that and feel comfortable with it, then you can apply it to other stuff as well.
Good advice for those viewers watching would be start that technique on the one string, on one note. Get that down, because obviously the pick in hand there is really the key to that, isn't it? Without this being accurate, i.e. don't run before you can walk, sort of thing. Make sure you've got a nice steady motion. And would you say that the timing was really important as well, or actually the note?
Well,
what did you listen for?
Almost definitely. I mean, there are accents within that lick that kind of allow you to focus on where you are in the time of things.
Right.
The best thing to do is probably have like maybe a drum machine or a metronome or something set at a fairly confident, competent kind of pace for you. Which will be fairly slow if you're not used to this sort of technique.
Good idea.
But I mean, there's definitely accents you can put in there, like at a slow tempo, so you can start to get a feel for it. But you've got your down pick and then your up pick sort of accent. So your down pick accent, you'd have. You probably there's a pulse in there that you follow, or you can have the upstroke, or you can have both. You know, and then you can kind of go into being able to just kind of improvise a bit more. You know,
amazing, great. So really, the alternate picking there, what was, you know, a real eureka moment for you, because it just enabled you to experiment with all this kind of stuff. And
I mean, you can use it with the old the humble pentatonic thing as well. I mean, the one thing I've noticed with my alternate picking is it does kind of change slightly if I'm doing pentatonic stuff.
Right.
You know, more kind of repeating licks like. I tend to start on an upstroke.
Oh, okay.
So you're kind of doing it in reverse. But again, it's something that it's really weird because it only really happens at a fast speed for me.
Yeah.
So you know, because kind of more of a Zakk Wylde approach. Because he's sort of the other way. Any picking he does, it's all economy picking.
Right.
I kind of don't want to go too much into that because it's not really a technique I'm totally familiar with, but it seems to be something that I've kind of, you know, adapted. So maybe alternate picking is the main thing that I use, but there is a certain amount of that kind of starting on an upstroke, especially with pentatonics. Maybe it's just because of the way the scale's put together or something.
Yeah, sure. Nice one, that's great. It's great to be able to see that. So there you go, guys. A bit of a alternate picking would be a great introduction in that. Start with a one note on one string and introduce extra notes on that string before you venture to more strings, really. That'd be good. That's brilliant. Thanks, Annie. Cool. When learning something new, when a new track or a new riff, a chord riff or a run or a technique comes to you, I just want you to, if you can, share with our viewers, what's your routine for getting it nailed, you know, in as quick as possible, so it's less painful.
Right.
You know, what kind of approach do you take to learning something new?
Well, I suppose the best thing for me to do is explain what I do for liplibrary.com.
Okay.
The tuitional thing that I do.
Yeah, sure.
You know, quite often, if I come up with any new sort of tracks I have to learn, or solos or anything like that in particular, solos take a bit longer. You know, the riff side of things, you know, it's probably the same approach, but I think the best thing to do with learning any new song is probably not even have a guitar in your hand when you first, you know, if it's a song that, you know, you're trying to learn that you haven't heard much, or you know, particularly in my case, if it's something that I've never heard, I'll basically just sit there and listen to it until I can sort of like note all the key parts of the song, and then I know them well enough that I could not listen to the song, I'd have them in my head. Because
so you're digesting it a little first, the actual track, just to get into
exactly.
You know,
I mean,
nuances and so on. Yeah, just to
it allows you to sort of like know when you're working on it where you're going wrong, almost, because if you can sort of like relate, you know, to the track and the notes and the order in which it's going, you can kind of hear when you're not doing it right, sort of thing. If you're familiar enough with the song, you know, because I mean, quite often, you know, you can end up learning a song and not being that familiar with it, and then you just sort of go with the flow and interpret it in your own way rather than actually learning exactly what's being played on record. Because obviously, when you're replicating it for like a DVD or a web lesson or something like that, you know, you need to be pretty 100% sure that you're delivering the most precise and accurate representation
on the money, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly. You know, because people are paying money obviously to learn something. They don't want to get a tutorial that's kind of a bit, you know, half cocked. Sort of
near enough. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, that's sort of like the key first of all, and then if it's like a solo or anything like that, it'll tend to be sort of like done in, you know, like baby step sort of chunks. You know, I'll take the first bit, and obviously, you know, you familiarise yourself with the whole solo, but you know, then comes the point where you've got to start with maybe the first sort of 5 seconds of it or something, and maybe just keep it playing round and round again. Search for that first note. If it's a bend or whatever, you know, then you can kind of try and find that bend, because then that'll give you, hopefully, if you can find that bend and find out where you are on the guitar, it sort of sets the roadmap out for where it's likely to go.
So try and grab the first couple of notes, at least it might help you with finger positioning to kick off.
Yeah, exactly, that sort of thing.
Because deconstructing solos is quite difficult anyway, you know, more so than learning the chords for the song, which is obviously relatively simple, but deconstructing a solo, it is actually quite a challenge, isn't it? You know, it's quite
it is, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there are things out there where you can slow the track down and, you know, obviously things like that. But I mean, I must admit, I mean, I don't tend to go down that route too much. I quite like hearing things up to speed.
No, yeah, make it faster. Yeah. Make it go faster.
Yeah, but if I can hear things in its kind of normal state rather than slowed down, I can get a better feel for the rhythm it's supposed to be in, and the timing for it and everything. So. Yeah, I mean, I tend not to get used to it at a slower tempo, because I struggle with the rhythm if it's not as it's supposed to be, because my ear's still trying to put it where I know it should be, something. Yeah. But, and obviously, get the first bit to a reasonable standard where you can play with the CD. The other thing as well when you're learning tracks is it's a good idea that if you play at a sort of relative volume to your CD player, or you've got headphones in, or whatever, that you can, when you play and the track plays, there's like a kind of unison going on where you're not hearing any odd notes popping out. Then you know that you're playing pretty much what is
That's
on the track.
Good point. Yeah, good advice. Because you get a bit of phase cancellation going on, perhaps, and you cancel the notes that you're hearing.
Yeah, so if you're struggling to hear what you're doing, then chances are you're probably playing.
Great advice. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
What I found is the way I kind of remember loads of different kind of techniques and licks and all that sort of thing is, as soon as I learn a new one or a new lick or something, I use it in a song that I'm writing. So, if I'm kind of getting stuck for ideas and stuff, rather than kind of repeating the same old thing, I'll kind of think, is there any new things that I've learned?
Yeah.
And I'll try and kind of make it fit, and, it keeps the songs fresh as well, so it sounds like you're doing new things each time. And also its application, so every time you play that song you have to play that lick that you've come up with, so then it becomes part of your own vocabulary. Great idea. Yeah, it's a really good way of remembering and banking licks,
cementing it in here for you by applying the technique you just learned. So,
exactly. Yeah,
great idea, brilliant. Okay, great advice, Andy, thanks for that. What does Andy James play when he picks up the guitar?
I don't know. I mean, I often sort of like warming up and stuff will just be probably more rhythm based than lead based, just to kind of get warmed up, get used to sort of like holding the guitar. But quite often it'll be something that I've maybe written or am writing, and I'll keep repeating the same riff just in case every time I pick up the guitar something new comes to me or whatever. I mean, I've been working on some stuff recently, and I had like a sort of riff idea that well, I suppose I'll play it. And
great. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Which is this, I think, right? It's just
sounds nice, man. Yeah, sounds good.
It's going around, stuff like that, working with different rhythms and stuff. I mean, I'll often sit with a drum machine and just kind of mess about with it, and drums can sometimes make you play a little bit different, and you can start to hear how it would maybe work in a band context, sort of thing, which is how I kind of write a lot of my demos and stuff.
Okay.
But the thing with riffing like that is you're giving your wrist a bit of a workout, because most of it's kind of down picking.
Yeah.
Which is quite essential for like tight. Metal rhythm, really,
nice
is to kind of
have
a nice kind of palm tone, which is often between the back pickup and the bridge.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of light palm muting, not really kind of tight, and you're sort of down picking as well, nice and even and stuff like that.
Like you're playing there, it just sort of tidies up the chord, doesn't it? It's a bit extra control across the guitar, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it helps having like the sort of E string drop down to D, which it was for that. I mean, the tuning for my band is basically D standard tuning with like the E drop down to a C.
Okay.
But it just makes things a little bit kind of easier that you can have that open chord. Rather than having to fret notes all the time,
throaty,
and it allows the freedom to kind of move about the guitar a bit more, sort of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll often be things like that. I mean, I often try and write things that use maybe more kind of superimposed sort of chords over other chords, if you like. I mean, there's a song that my band's done called 2800,
right?
And the chorus is sort of like this. I mean, it's not in the right key, but it'll go something like this. But yeah,
nice.
I mean, basically, it just kind of adds more of a melodic element to playing chords and stuff like that. And I'm always messing about with, things like that that kind of seem to open out a bit more rather than, just concentrating on riffs and root and fifth power chords all the time. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it sounds amazing. So it's great. You basically you're working on the new stuff, whatever's in your head at the time. You just
and it's application. The more you play it, the more you're used to it you get, and often it's quite useful to be used to what. Because sometimes you do have to learn your own songs in a way.
You do, yeah. You did right, yeah. You're kind of confirming that you're on the right path, aren't you? I think
and live is important, I think, because you've got like the songs going past. Some of them can be quite sort of frantic, so you really need to, have a breast of what you're doing.
Where would you start if you were just kicking off? What's a good routine for them to look at?
Okay, well, I mean. I would sort of say a good place to start is knowing your your pentatonic positions. I mean, there's only 5 of them. It's not really it's something that's going to take up like loads of like brain space or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 note per string kind of major scales aside and all that kind of stuff. Pentatonics are definitely a real fundamental in pretty much any guitar style. I would sort of argue.
Yeah, sure. I agree. Yeah.
But I mean, there are ways that you can play it in more of a kind of shred context. There's often you can combine 2 pentatonic sort of scale shapes together. And use more of a kind of 3 note per string sort of approach. I mean.
Okay. Can you give us an example of what you mean there?
Yeah, the sort of thing. I mean, like combining. I mean, if we could do this in E, we can do it just with this position. So we've got. Which is just your first position, sort of E minor pentatonic.
Yeah, okay.
And then you've got position number 2. You can actually just sort of like use those notes and create like your own sort of 3 note per string patterns using 2 positions together. So, the pattern that I'm going to kind of play is going to look like this. So it's sort of 3 notes on the top string and then 2 notes on the E string, but you're using notes specifically from those two positions. So at a slow tempo, it will be. It's definitely something that when it's up to speed, it can sound pretty cool. Okay. And should hopefully be something like this, but let's give it a go. And you can kind of combine it in sort of like other stuff. Also, if you're interested in extending that, you can also kind of do it on the top 2 strings and have something that will look like this at a slow tempo. Okay.
So you work back to the basic.
Yeah, so you work back to the first sort of like position, but you're just extending it. It might be a cool way to end a song, and you might have something like this.
Excellent. That's really nice. Cause you starting that coming backwards though, yeah? You're coming backwards from that. Would you play up to that position as well?
No, sort of. No. It's one of those sort of like one-way ticket licks, you know.
Yeah.
And going up is kind of different, but then that's a good thing because then you're not repeating yourself. If you kind of, maybe play a lick like that.
So all this is basically stemming from the standard pentatonic scale. So like you say, it crosses many genres, but clearly they're mixing the 2 modes together. Your first 2 positions.
And it's also you practice for like alternate picking as well and stuff like that. So there are things that you can sort of like do.
So great advice here, Andy. Thanks for that. So basically taking your pentatonic scale, working on it, making sure your notes are clean and your alternate picking, working on it, and then working on a second mode and mixing the 2 together is a great pathway to get something close to what you just performed there for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's basically taking a simple concept and just extending it. I mean that's often how to sort of like build licks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
It just keeps things simple in the head, sort of thing.
Brilliant. Sound amazing, Andy. Thank you so much for that. If people want to find out more about Andy James, where can they go? Have you got a web address that we can tell people to find out more about?
Well, I've got a new website that should be going online fairly soon, which would be andyjamesguitarist.com, and it would basically just have like music, videos, photos, you know, things that I'm going to be getting up to, whether it's you know, clinics or gigs with Sacred Mother Tongue, or you know, any sessions that I've been working on or anything like that.
Sure. And we'll bring it up on the screen. It's andyjamesguitarist.com, yeah?
Yeah, and there's also Facebook as well. You know, Facebook's a kind of thing that I update occasionally. It's got no music on it or anything, but I think I'm getting around to doing a proper site in favour of having that instead of, you know, MySpace, because I've got a MySpace, but since they've changed the layout and stuff, it's been a bit harder to manage. And
so people can generally come in and interact with you on Facebook anyway, and find out where your other stuff is anyway if they find you there.
Yeah, and also licklibrary.com for all the, you know, sort of like tutorial stuff that I have done and everything like that.
All the DVDs that you've had out in the past. Yeah. Check those out. It's definitely worth checking those out if you want to just try and pick up, you know, a small slice of Andy James. You know, I highly recommend that you go and check those out. Just a great starting point. So you've got some structure to follow a lot of the stuff we've spoken about today. Andy, brilliant, mate. Thanks as much. It's been a pleasure having you over at Crash Course Muso. Thanks, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. Hope Andy come and join us again sometime in the future. Keep your eyes peeled. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now. Shall we play out, Andy? Shall we busk out?
Yeah, why not?
2, 3, bam.